Welcome again to The Old Principal. I am the Old Principal, and this is Lesson 159, The Bogarts and Missouri. Oh, that's a pretty looking picture. It brings back a lot of memories. The Bogarts and Missouri. And this is my story, and we've got to listen to the story before we can start explaining it. So stay by for the story.
Number 159, The Bogarts and Missouri. After my mother passed away, our neighbors were very sympathetic and occasionally did nice things for our family. The Bogarts lived just down the street. Mrs. Bogart was secretary to our principal. Mr. Bogart had a PhD in animal husbandry and taught at Oregon State University. One summer, the Bogarts took my brother on a trip to Missouri. The next summer, they offered to take both my brother and me. Surely, they thought, two little boys would provide companionship for each other. But they found that two boys are far more difficult to manage than one. It was really educational for us to drive by car. I had never traveled so far from home. And when we got to Mrs. Bogart's parents' home in Missouri, we discovered a whole new world. In that part of Missouri, the telephones were old-fashioned. They had no dialing mechanism. To make a call, you had to crank it 5 or 6 times and then wait for the operator to come on the line to help you. I also discovered that the house had no running water. I had never been in a house with no faucets. All the drinking water was carried from an outside well with an old-fashioned hand pump. But the pump had to be primed by pouring water down it each time before it would draw water up from the ground. The priming water came from barrels of collected rainwater. Of course, with no running water, their bathroom was unlike our modern bathrooms. I can't remember how we bathed, but to use the toilet we had to leave the house and trot down a path to the outhouse. The outhouse was a box with a roof placed over a large hole. The smell was offensive and the flies annoying. You really wouldn't want one in the house. And so that's why outhouses were called houses.
Okay, here we go. After my mother passed away, 我母亲去世了以后, and remember, how old was I? If you remember our past lessons, you will remember that I was 11 years old at that time. Our neighbors were very sympathetic and occasionally did nice things for our family. Okay, our neighbors, 邻居, were very sympathetic, 很同情我们啊. And occasionally, 偶然, did some nice things for our family. Go ahead. The Bogarts lived just down the street. From our house to the Bogarts' house, was probably, maybe 100 meters. Not very far, 100 meters, not so far. But the Bogarts were very interesting people. Go ahead. Mrs. Bogart was secretary to our principal. 是我小学校长的秘书. Okay, that's Mrs. Bogart. And Mr. Bogart had a PhD in animal husbandry. Whoa, Mr. Bogart had a PhD. 他是博士学位 okay, in animal husbandry. 畜牧学 I hope that's right. Whatever is animal husbandry, and that is they're studying animals, they're growing animals, 畜牧学. And in fact, at our university, which was not far from our house, we had sheep barns. They had just for studying sheep, and swine for pigs. Sheep 就是羊, swine or pigs 就是猪. And they also had horses and cows. So they studied the 4 different animals, 畜牧学, animal husbandry, and he taught school at Oregon State University, 这个 Oregon 州立大学. Go ahead. One summer, the Bogarts took my brother on a trip to Missouri. Now, I don't know why, but maybe they just wanted to, they were afraid of little boys. 可能是怕那个小男孩. So the Bogarts, Mrs. Bogart and her daughter took my brother on a trip to Missouri. Missouri 州是美国中部的一个州 Missouri. Now, my brother went there. He had a good time, I'm sure. I didn't go, maybe because I was older, a little older. But the next summer, they offered to take both my brother and me. 他们愿意带我们两个我跟我的弟弟, which was good because now I could go to Missouri. Going on. Surely they thought 2 little boys would provide companionship for each other. 这个肯定 surely 肯定他们的思想是这样. 2 little boys would provide companionship. Companionship means that they are together. 2 people or some people together. Together is companionship. And so they thought maybe 这个友谊的关系很好. At least we would have each other, and that would be good. Except, keep in mind, while one little boy is easy to control, 2 little boys may not be so easy to control, right? So that's the way it went. In fact, they found that 2 boys are far more difficult to manage 管理 than 1. Yeah, well, it makes sense. 1 little boy maybe is 胆子有一点小, maybe a little shy, but when he has his best friend, at least his brother, with him, then 2个人比较不容易管. Going on. It was really educational. Okay, when I say it was really educational, I mean I learned a lot. Okay, first of all, we had to drive there from Oregon, 西北, to drive to Missouri, 美国中部, We had to go over some mountains, the Rocky Mountains. Okay, these big, big mountains in America. And it was a long ways away. And I have never traveled. 我从来没有旅行这么远啊。So I just learned a lot. I had never traveled away from home so far. It was a long, long ways. So I learned a lot. It was educational. Okay. Educational in this means 我学习到很多. Go ahead. And when we got to Mrs. Bogart's parents' home in Missouri, we discovered a whole new world. That's true. Maybe we'll put this down. I'll try to explain this. It was really, really interesting. When we got to Mrs. Bogart's parents' home, it was 一个完全新的世界. I mean, it was a new world. Okay? We discovered things that we didn't even know. Of course, there were a lot of things little boys don't know, but we discovered many interesting things going on. First of all, in this part of Missouri, the telephones were old-fashioned. Do you know what old-fashioned means? 老式的, 旧的, like maybe something that's used 50 or 100 years ago. Okay, they had no dialing mechanism. Okay, now, what does it mean to dial? A dial of phone means 拨一个号码. Nowadays, we just on. But in when I was young, we had a round thing, and you go yo, 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 yo. Okay, something like this. Even that's old-fashioned nowadays. I haven't seen one for 20 or 30 years. We just don't have that. Okay, but there was no dialing mechanism. So what did you have to do? Okay, to make a call, 要打一个电话, you had to crank it 5 or 6 times. And then you had to wait for the operator. 接线生啊, the operator, somebody, this is your operator, may I help you? You know, she would answer the telephone and she'd come online. To come online means that she would answer your telephone call and to help you. Going on. I also discovered that the house had no running water. Now, we were way out in the countryside. This is country. This is a farm. It's not in the city. The roads were very bad. Out here, they had no running water. Can you imagine that? 没有自来水. No running water. And in fact, I had never been in a house with no faucets. 我从来没有进去过一个家庭，而没有水龙头 faucets. This house had no running water, and of course, in the house, there were no faucets. Wow. Seems strange, doesn't it? Nowadays, we have all of these things. Go ahead. All the drinking water, okay? All the drinking water, because you have water, and then you have drinking water, 可喝的水. All this drinking water was carried from the outside well with an old-fashioned hand pump. Okay, where do we start? First of all the water that you wanted to drink or use in the house had to come from outside. They had a well, 水井. Okay, and the well, 这个 well, 水井, okay, had an old-fashioned 水泵. Okay, 水泵 is a pump for pumping water. Now, even today, you can still find those kinds of pumps. In America, maybe, yeah, you can still find some, or other parts of the world. So it's not impossible to find this kind of pump. Now, if you used this old-fashioned kind of pump, then you needed to prime the pump. See, going on next, the pump had to be primed. Is it primed? Okay, what does that mean? To prime a pump means to prepare the pump to be used. In this case, what you did is you had to take water and pour it down it. In other words, you took water and you poured the water into the pump. Okay, into the pump. Now, where did you get the water to prime the pump? Okay, well, we'll get to that in just a minute. Each time before it would draw water up from the ground. In other words, if you were just to use the pump, boom, 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 and you pump the water, no water would come. Why? Because you first had to pour a little bit of water in, and then that helped the pump to start to do its job, and the water would come up and up and up. Okay? The priming water came from barrels of collected rainwater. So where did they get the water? If you couldn't get water out of the ground, where could you get the water? Well, they collected, 他们就收集这个雨水, the rainwater, and they collected it in 水桶, big barrels, 水桶, 50-gallon barrels, 50 gallon的这个水桶, and they put it in there, and then when they needed water, they just took some water out of there, went over to the pump, poured it in, pump, 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 and then they had plenty of water. Of course, with no running water, their bathroom was unlike any modern bathrooms. Now, in our houses today, most houses, well, in America for sure, and most places in the world, houses have bathrooms. Okay? 这个洗手间、厕所等等 is inside the house. But now remember, there is no running water. 没有自来水. Okay, so their 洗手间 is unlike our modern bathrooms. Okay. First of all, if you wanted to take a bath, you probably did it sometimes outside the house, sometimes inside the house. 你要洗澡. If you did it inside the house, you had to bring the water inside. If you did it outside, 比较方便. It's more convenient because the water is out there. Okay, 不像我们现在的这个洗手间啊. Going on, I can't remember how we bathed, but to use the toilet, 我记不得我们是怎么洗澡. Actually, if you really want to know, we went swimming almost every day. There was a place to go swimming, so we went swimming every day. So maybe they said, oh, they went swimming, no need to take a bath. 不用洗澡. 我不晓得. I don't remember. But to use the toilet, 你要上厕所呢, we had to leave the house and trot down the path to an outhouse. Okay, here are a few words here that we need to look at. First of all, we had to use the toilet. Toilet, 这个 nowadays we call it toilet 这个抽水马桶. Okay, 抽水马桶. Okay, and we had to leave the house, 离开家. Okay, and trot down the path. Now, when in English, when Americans say, oh, I'm going to trot down the path, trot means 慢跑. Okay, 慢跑, to trot or to jog down the path or trot down the path. But sometimes we use to trot down the path is just a colorful way 这个能够描述 that you had to move down the path. It doesn't mean that we were running, we were walking, usually walking. Okay, we had to trot down the path to an outhouse. What is an outhouse? Have you ever seen an outhouse? I can't remember. Yeah, I think I've seen some in China. But let's, even today in America and many parts of the world, they have outhouses. In South America, 南美洲, where my son works, they have outhouses. 在丛林里面, 他们有这个 outhouse. What is an outhouse? Okay, going on. An outhouse was a box with a roof placed over a large hole. Okay, very simple. An outhouse is a box. 很大的盒子, 一个箱子. Made out of wood, of course. And there's a 这个屋顶, 一个房顶, okay, a little roof on it. And where is it put? They first dig a hole, 挖一个洞, 一个大的洞. Then they put this little box over the hole, and that is an outhouse. An outhouse, a place where people can go to the bathroom. 要小便、大便等等都是在这个地方. So go to the bathroom. The smell was offensive. The smell, 这个香味一点都不香啊. Okay, 这是臭味. offensive， 很难闻到的 ，very offensive。And the flies 苍蝇是非常讨厌的。Okay, so offensive smell. It smelled bad. It smelled bad. And of course, not only smelled bad, but the smell and everything in the outhouse attracted 吸引 the flies 苍蝇. So there were many, many flies there. 也是非常非常讨厌的. Okay, so going on to the next one. So that's why outhouses were called, and I just wrote it this way, houses, outhouses, because it smelled and there were flies, and of course we wanted to keep that out of the house. 我们真正的住家，我不愿意这些东西跑到里面。See, nowadays we use water, 用自来水 so我们可以把一切弄得干干净净的。We can keep everything clean, everything can be washed away, 冲走 but in those days, couldn't do that. Well, now we've looked at going to Missouri a long time ago when I was a young boy. You can write a letter to us. The letter, our email address is theoldprinciple@gmail.com. theoldprinciple@gmail.com. You can also check out our website, 我们的网站，你可以看我们的节目 www.theoldprinciple.org. With that, it's been a pleasure spending this time with you today, and I hope that you will join me next time.